Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna take a look at this orchid and try to make the best out of an orchid fail. And if you remember in my updates video, I showed you this Angraecum. It's the magdalenae. I told you there's no more hope for it and we're gonna do a separate video out of it. So I'll use it in this video as an example of how I actually try to make the best out of a bad situation. Losing orchids is never fun, that's something it's not. But it can be an educational experience if you want it to be and if you're interested in something like that. So today we're gonna diagnose the real reason why this orchid dies. And of course this is just one example, but I hope you get the idea of it. So first of all, I'm gonna think about this orchid's history. In my case, this orchid is in my collection for 2.5 years. I received it from a friend, it was tiny. In the meantime, it grew in my care, it produced roots, it produced foliage, it looked okay. It wasn't in the best shape when I received it, but not in the worst. I managed to bounce it back. Now, earlier this year, my orchid developed crown rot. As you can see, let me try to zoom you in. The crown is dead. If I split these leaves, I can see a dried leaf in the middle. This orchid did not produce any more leaves, so pretty much it's obvious it had crown rot. However, the disease did not spread. Until now, it should have spread down its axis. So at this stage in our thought process, we can eliminate crown rot from the equation, as this orchid did not lose its leaves, did not lose its axis, so crown rot is not the real reason why this orchid is dying now. Moving forward, what did this orchid do? And I actually made a video about it. It started to grow a keiki, a basal keiki. Now, this is pretty common with orchids that suffer from crown rot, and this is actually what we're aiming at, stopping the crown rot disease and hoping for a keiki that can continue this orchid's life. And as you can see, this orchid was producing a keiki. It was looking quite well up until about a month or two ago. Things started to take a turn for the worse. And I'm not referring to how this orchid looks now, although this one is declining as well, but how the keiki is looking now. So if we take a closer look, we can see some brown or actually dark spots on the keiki, both on the axis and also in the crown of the keiki. You can see I have a black spot and a dried leaf right there at the top. So what this can tell us is that this orchid might suffer again from crown rot. So we need to think if somehow we favored crown rot. If we know we actually placed water in this keiki, then we can draw the conclusion that this is the reason why this keiki is now dying. In my case though, I was extremely careful about placing water in this keiki out of the fear of crown rot. So even if crown rot is a possibility for this keiki, I will not consider it the cause of death just yet. Because analyzing my steps, I discovered I didn't do anything to promote crown rot. So I will continue the dissection, maybe I will find the actual true reason. So as we can see here, this orchid was trying to produce another keiki. This actually sprouted about a month or a month and a half ago, and it actually didn't grow since. It started to develop, but it didn't grow. But something is simply not letting it grow, not offering enough energy to it. Now let's take a closer look at the roots. We need to figure out if this orchid has viable roots or not. Now these roots look slightly weird. As you can see, they look a little bit woody. This orchid is not supposed to have this type of roots. The roots on this orchid are a little fuzzy, but they're fleshy. So to continue the research, we need to unpot this orchid and see how it looks like at a root level. Maybe we're dealing with some root rot here. Now looking at the roots, we can see they're not dead. We're not suffering from root rot. They have substance. They're not dead. They're able to pick up moisture and nutrients. So then we can think that maybe this display is a consequence of lack of calcium. If you didn't know, calcium deficiency actually looks like rotting, but it's not. Now in my case, I am using a fertilizer which has added calcium. And none of my other orchids, including other members of the Angraecum family, display calcium deficiency. So for now, I will put this possibility at one side and try to research more and see exactly if any of the two possibilities, crown rot or calcium deficiency, is actually the true reason of my orchid's demise. Now, given my recent history with the fusarium disease, I'm now interested in testing this orchid for fusarium. So again, it has to do with something that is happening currently in your environment. If there's anything affecting your other orchids, try to take it into consideration when figuring out the cause of death of a different orchid. So what I will do right now is try to figure out if this orchid is infected with fusarium that might have helped with the demise. Now, with sympodial orchids, cutting the rhizome can can give you an idea if your orchid is infected with fusarium or not. When it comes to monopodial orchids, there is no rhizome we can cut. So in this case, I already know this orchid is dying. I cut the stem, and this is what I found. So hopefully this camera can render the true colors. I have some purple spots here and here. And in one of my cases of fusarium, the actual ring spot was located on the roots as well. So let's take a look at the other section of the rhizome that I cut, and let's see how it looks like. I can see a purplish ring here and a purple dot here next to this root, and in the section a little bit more purple on the outer edge of the axis. Another thing that I've discovered with a different orchid that I had suffering from fusarium is that the older roots were actually covered in that ring through the velamen. So actually the velamen turned purple. And considering this disease actually enters the orchid through the velamen in most cases, and it attacks rhizomes and root systems, in some cases you will be able to see the purple in the roots as well. And here I have a pretty dark purple color surrounding the actual string root you see inside. And cutting into the keiki itself, we can see the fusarium disease, right at the base of the keiki. So we weren't dealing with crown rot, which starts from the top. We were dealing with something coming from the base, in my case fusarium. So this is the very top of my orchid. As you can see, this is the crown rot. And in the section you can see it better, but at some point it stopped. It didn't continue to move downward, so crown rot was not the case of my orchid's demise. And I really hope this camera shows the difference in color. What I just showed you was a dark purple. This is black and maybe a little bit brown, but it's pure black. So when assessing this and you see something, try to not confuse the sheath's browning or black's color with the more purpley colors. I have experienced orchids that had fusarium which had a very dark purple color around the roots, around the rhizomes, and some roots which had a brighter purple color. And I suppose this only has to do with the age of the orchid and the longevity of the disease and of the affected tissue. The more it is infected, the more it dies out, the color gets darker and darker. Eventually, that outer coating of the actual fungus dies as well and moves forward in the orchid. So now that we have a more plausible reason for our orchid's demise, what can we do? Well, of course, first of all, we need to research what this disease is and what other people's experience is and what articles suggest we do. We also need to see if we favorized it or caused it in any way and what we can do to prevent it from happening again. In my case, it was pretty obvious and I was actually expecting it. I won't go into the details, but whatever other disease you find, it's a good idea to start learning about that disease. You might have encountered a common disease or a not so common disease. Overall, the conclusion is the same. You lost an orchid. So by trying to figure out exactly the circumstances under which you lost that orchid will actually help you save others in the future. And trust me when I tell you that we all lose orchids. It's inevitable. The more we stay in the hobby, the more orchids we grow, the more various diseases we'll have, the more various cases and instances we'll have. And it's not a shame to lose orchids. And although it's not a pleasant thing, this is how we learn actually. And pretty much that is my thought process whenever I lose an orchid. Now, some orchids I do lose for pretty obvious reasons. Maybe it was crown rot or maybe stem rot. At some point you'll start to spot the diseases and know exactly what happened, but in the beginning it can be quite confusing. And this sort of analyzing what happened to my orchid actually helped me with other orchids. I at least had an idea of what I was dealing with, how I was able to avoid it, and every day I had a loss, I learned more than I knew the day before, and that can never hurt. So I hope this was useful to you guys if you're ever in the situation where you really want to know why you lost an orchid. First of all, think of the history of that orchid, think of what you provided for that orchid, see the signs and try to research what that signs can mean and try to apply the answers that you find to your own experience. See which ones can apply and then analyze the steps do a little dissection after your orchid dies. That sounds a little bit weird, but it's true. That's what I did. But at least, take that loss as a learning experience and as a way for you to prevent the loss of other orchids. And that is the motivating thought that I always have in my head, and it helps me, and I hope it will help you as well. So thank you guys for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for daily orchids and plants videos, and I'll see you all next time. Bye! One of my viewers actually said that one day I'm gonna break this spike, and I just hit it again while filming this ending. So yeah, you know what I'm gonna do with this one? I'm just gonna point it like this because it's already kind of long and we're brushing against each other, and the last thing I want is to lose the spike. It's already been almost 3 months since I first saw it starting to form. So fingers crossed that I don't mess it up.